Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something deeply unsettling, a shadow that's spreading across Russia. Beneath the surface of state propaganda and the image of total control, something dark is happening, and it seems even Vladimir Putin, once seen as the all-powerful leader, is now struggling to contain it. This isn't just about politics or war anymore. It's about fear, power, and the crumbling illusion of control in a nation that's beginning to fracture from within. Over the past 2 years, the world has watched Russia isolate itself from the global stage. But inside the country, a different kind of war is being fought, one that has nothing to do with Ukraine or NATO. It's a silent war waged in the shadows between powerful oligarchs, rival intelligence factions, and nationalist groups that are starting to act independently of the Kremlin. These aren't mere political disputes. They're signs of a system that's slowly starting to eat itself from the inside. For decades, Putin built his empire on loyalty not to the nation, but to himself. Every oligarch, general, and intelligence officer owed their position to his personal approval. But now that loyalty is cracking. A wave of mysterious deaths among Russian elites has shaken the foundations of that system. Oil executives falling out of windows, businessmen found dead in strange suicides, and generals disappearing without explanation. These are not coincidences. They are messages, warnings, power plays, and desperate attempts to silence anyone who knows too much. At first, Putin's circle dismissed these incidents as isolated. But as the number of unexplained deaths grew, it became impossible to ignore. It revealed a power struggle that has long been hidden from the public eye, a fight among factions inside Russia's own elite. The military, the intelligence services, and the private mercenary groups are no longer working in harmony. They're competing for influence, resources, and survival. When Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, staged his brief rebellion against Moscow, it was a moment that exposed the cracks in Putin's control. Though the rebellion ended quickly, it sent a chilling message. Someone inside Russia dared to challenge the Kremlin and lived to tell about it, at least for a while. The fact that Putin couldn't stop the mutiny before it began revealed just how fragile his authority had become. Even though Prigozhin later died in a suspicious plane crash, the damage was already done. The illusion of total control had been shattered. Since then, Russia has seen a rise in secret purges, loyalty tests, and internal surveillance. Putin's paranoia has reached new heights. The Federal Security Service, or FSB, once his strongest weapon, has turned inward. Its agents are monitoring not just opposition figures, but also other government officials, military officers, and even members of Putin's own inner circle. The Kremlin no longer trusts anyone completely. It's as if Putin's empire is now devouring itself in fear. Meanwhile, across Russia, an undercurrent of unrest is growing. The war in Ukraine has dragged on longer than anyone in Moscow anticipated, draining the economy and pushing the country towards silent desperation. The average Russian citizen is facing inflation, job losses, and the haunting realization that their sons and brothers may never return from the front lines. Protests are quickly silenced, but dissent is quietly spreading online, in homes, and in whispers across the cities. What's even more alarming is the rise of ultranationalist militias within Russia itself. Groups that once fought for the Kremlin's interests abroad are now turning their frustration inward. They accuse the government of corruption, incompetence, and weakness. Many of these groups are armed, organized, and angry. They see themselves as the true defenders of Russia, not Putin's government. This growing movement represents one of the biggest internal threats to the Kremlin since the fall of the Soviet Union. Putin has tried to maintain his grip through propaganda and fear. State media continues to project strength and stability, painting the West as an eternal enemy and Putin as the only protector of Russian sovereignty. But behind closed doors, the narrative is collapsing. High-ranking officials are fleeing the country, moving assets abroad, and secretly trying to secure their families' futures outside of Russia. They see what's coming. Sanctions have crippled Russia's access to foreign goods and financial systems, forcing it into uneasy alliances with nations like Iran, China, and North Korea. While these relationships provide short-term relief, they also reveal Russia's growing dependency. China, for instance, benefits massively from discounted Russian oil while offering little real support in return. This dynamic has quietly humiliated the Kremlin, turning Russia, once a global superpower, into something closer to a client state. And yet, Putin can't admit weakness. His entire image, his very legitimacy, depends on projecting invincibility. But each passing month makes that harder to maintain. The Russian military continues to suffer heavy losses. Corruption within the defense ministry drains resources, and as morale falls, even loyal soldiers are beginning to question what they're fighting for. When that doubt spreads to the generals, no amount of propaganda can restore faith. Even within Moscow's political elite, whispers are growing louder. Some want to distance themselves from the president. Others quietly discuss a future Russia without Putin. None of this is said publicly. Of course, that would be suicide. But in private meetings and encrypted messages, plans are being drawn, not for a revolution, but for survival when the current system inevitably collapses. The question isn't if Putin's power will weaken, it's when, and who will move first to claim what's left. Economically, the outlook is grim. Despite attempts to paint Russia as self-reliant, the reality is that sanctions and war spending have hollowed out its stability. Ordinary Russians are paying the price. Factories lack parts, shelves miss products, and the ruble continues to lose value. State media blames the West, but people know the truth. The war is bleeding them dry, and the government has no real solution except censorship and repression. Censorship, in fact, has become the new weapon of survival for the Kremlin. Independent journalists are either imprisoned or exiled. News outlets are shut down overnight. But despite this, truth finds a way to spread through social media, encrypted apps, and underground channels. Russians are learning to see through the lies, and that, more than anything else, terrifies Putin's regime. At the same time, the power of regional leaders within Russia is growing. Governors and local military commanders in far-flung regions like Chechnya, Dagestan, and the Urals are building their own power bases. They command local militias, control economic resources, and enjoy the loyalty of their people more than that of Moscow. This decentralized power threatens the very idea of a unified Russian state. If Putin loses the loyalty of these regional leaders, Russia could begin to fragment not through revolution, but through quiet disobedience. In Chechnya, for example, Ramzan Kadyrov continues to play both ally and rival to Putin. While publicly loyal, Kadyrov's forces operate with near-total independence. He's built his own fiefdom, a state within a state. And if the balance of power shifts, he could become one of the most dangerous figures in post-Putin Russia. Others like him are watching closely, waiting for the moment when Moscow's grip weakens enough for them to make their own move. The Kremlin's attempts to maintain control through intimidation are beginning to backfire. The more the regime cracks down, the more resentment it fuels. Families of fallen soldiers are speaking out. Former loyalists are questioning decisions, and a new generation of Russians, raised in the age of the internet, no longer believes the official narrative. They see the corruption, the hypocrisy, and the lies, and they want change, even if they don't yet know what that change should look like. As winter approaches, the situation may worsen. Energy revenues, once Putin's lifeline, are declining due to falling demand and oil price caps. Meanwhile, the cost of war continues to rise. Russia is burning through its reserves to keep the economy afloat and fund its military machine. The longer this continues, the deeper the crisis becomes. It's a slow-motion collapse that even the most powerful propaganda cannot hide forever. For Putin, the most dangerous threat isn't from abroad, it's from within. It's the betrayal of those he once trusted, the disillusionment of the people, and the quiet rebellion growing inside his own government. His once unquestioned authority is now sustained through fear alone. But history has shown that fear has an expiration date. Once the people realize that their ruler is not invincible, the spell breaks. What we are witnessing in Russia today may be the early stages of such a moment. The signs are everywhere: the infighting, the mysterious deaths, the economic decay, and the growing discontent. Something dark is happening behind the Kremlin walls, something even Putin may no longer be able to control. The machine he built to maintain his power is now turning against him. But make no mistake, this won't end overnight. The system Putin created is vast, and its collapse will be messy. There will be purges, betrayals, and possibly violence as rival factions fight to fill the vacuum. The fate of Russia could hinge not on one man's decision, but on who moves fastest when the old order finally falls apart. For now, the world can only watch as Russia's darkness grows deeper. On the outside, it looks like strength, defiance against the West, bold military actions, fiery speeches. But inside, it's a different story: fear, uncertainty, and decay. A nation where silence is survival and truth is a crime. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Vladimir Putin, once seen as the master of control, now finds himself trapped in the very web he spun. Surrounded by loyalists who may turn on him at any moment, facing a people who are losing faith, and haunted by the ghosts of those who dared to oppose him, he stands isolated, a ruler without trust, a leader running out of time. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain: Russia is changing, and not even Putin can stop it. The darkness spreading through his empire is no longer something he can command. It's something he unleashed, and now it's coming for him. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global events. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned because the story of modern Russia is far from over.